Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I am going to be doing a review of Old Goriot by Honoré de Balzac. This was my first Balzac and to be honest with you, I didn't know what to expect. I had literally never heard of this book before, but I came across it randomly as I was doing some research on French classics and this is one that popped up a couple of times. So I decided to do a quick search on what were the themes in this book and it just immediately jumped up to the top of my TBR. I did not know what to expect because, as I said, this was my first Balzac. And I have to say, overall, this is one of those absolutely masterful classics that is just so underrated and nobody's ever heard of it, which is criminal because it's such a fantastic book. This is a book where we follow a range of characters with our main character being Père Goriot, but there is a wide cast of characters that we follow and it blends deep psychological insight with social critiques. This is a book that captures the ruthless reality of ambition, class, social climbing, familial sacrifice in a post-Napoleonic Paris. This is a book that is not just about an old man and his selfish daughters. This is a book about so much more than that. It's a book that meditates on the topics of power, wealth, and the corrupting force of society. So if that doesn't already interest you, I don't know what else I can say to convince you, but we're going to spend the next 10-15 minutes trying to do so. So let's talk about Balzac's writing style. It is very detailed, sometimes overwhelmingly so, and I think this is going to put a lot of people off. His descriptions of settings, especially one of the main places where the book takes place, are sometimes a bit overdone, but there is a vividness to those descriptions that I actually personally really appreciate. As an example, he doesn't just describe the room, he makes you feel the room, like the dampness in it, the peeling wallpaper, the dust motes flying around. It's suffocating, and I think that's indicative of the broader themes of the book that I personally really appreciate. So this attention to detail does actually serve a purpose. He is almost writing through the eye of a social scientist, and he treats Paris almost as a character. It's a living organism that breathes, and every street, every plant, every piece of furniture, every character reflects one aspect of a larger social reality. And I think you only really appreciate that once you finish the book. There is an omniscient narrator as part of this book that frequently breaks away from the plot to offer philosophical musings on a variety of different topics like money and power and human nature. Sometimes it's very profound and sometimes it's very overwhelming, but it's always going to make you stop for a second and actually think about what's being written. I think some people are not going to enjoy those interruptions, but I actually think it really works for this book. And I actually really like the omniscient narrator because he's quite witty and he's almost quite judgmental, but not necessarily in a bad way. He's just kind of judging what is happening, not necessarily the individuals for making the decisions that they make, if that makes sense. It takes a bit of time getting used to. It can be a little dense in places, but I think if you're prepared for that going into it, or if you've read a decent amount of classics before picking up this book, I think you'll be okay with it. The next thing that I will talk about is how this is a book that is very much a slow burn, but I personally think it's a slow burn that pays off. It's not a fast-paced novel. It unfolds gradually. There are layers of the onion being unpeeled as the book progresses, and it's all through character interactions rather than action. This is very much a character-driven book. There is no detailed plot that you typically get in fantasy or some of the other classics. It's very much focusing on these individuals and their individual journeys, where they were before the events of this book and where they may potentially go after the events of this book. The first half of the book really focuses on world building and establishing relationships, which may test the patience of many readers. So do be aware of that going into it, but I want to give you that warning so that you can be prepared for it. Because as I said, it does really pay off. And I think you need to have that build up in order to really get the ending and really appreciate the ending as well. I think as the stakes become more clear, once you kind of get halfway through up until the kind of last 3/4 of the book, the novel does start to really kind of ramp up. And I think that's where it becomes really compelling. But again, you have to go through that first half in order to get that payoff. There is a really big emotional climax that I think is so devastating and it's so memorable. I don't want to mention what it is because obviously that's going to spoil the book, but It's incredibly memorable and it's going to be kept in my mind for many, many years to come, because it doesn't end with a resolution. It actually ends with a promise from one of the characters, and it is just so masterfully done. It almost feels quite cinematic when you're reading it, and I just absolutely loved it. And I think that's part of the reason why this book is just absolutely phenomenal. As I mentioned, this book is incredibly character driven, and I think if you're going to do a character driven book, your characters really need to stand on their own. And not only does Balzac completely excel at character creation, but he also has so many characters that are unforgettable. These are characters that I will remember until the end of time, or until the end of my time. And there's a couple of characters that I'm going to shout out. There's obviously the title character, Old Goriot. He is very much a tragic character who's very much quite self-destructive, and he's self-destructive in terms of love and how he loves the people around him. He's blindly devoted to his family, even though they consistently exploit and abandon him, and it's absolutely heartbreaking and also incredibly infuriating. It's just, I've mentioned this before, I really like explorations around parental-child relationships, and I think this is quite a pessimistic view of it, and I actually quite appreciated that. There's another two characters that I'm going to mention briefly. We've got Eugène de Rastignac, who is a law student, very, very ambitious. While he's quite sympathetic, he's also quite frustrating, and he's also quite relatable, I think, for that exact reason. He wants to climb this social ladder, which is understandable, yet he's always willing to compromise on his morals, which make him a deeply, deeply flawed individual and deeply flawed protagonist. We have another character called Vautrin. I said that way wrong. I don't speak French, so I apologise. He's a Machiavellian character, he's a criminal, and I think he's actually one of the most interesting characters in the book. He's incredibly cynical yet brutally honest, and he challenges Rastignac's and also the reader's beliefs about morality and success. And that's the sort of character that I really love. Like they're kind of a bad character, a bad person, yet they raise a lot of really valid points, and you can't help but consider them because of that. There is also a wide range of secondary characters. They're all very distinct, and they all have these incredible details surrounding them, and they all represent different aspects and facets of Parisian society. Fantastic. This is a book that I'd actually love to see in the theatre. Like, I think somebody should adapt this to the theatre, because I think it would be so interesting to see it kind of performed on a stage. Anybody wants to do it, let me know, I'll help for free. All right, let's talk about themes. I've already kind of touched on this briefly, but at the heart of Old Goriot is the discussion around social climbing and the moral decay that often accompanies ambition. The more that you rise up the ladder, the more your sense of morality declines. And he portrays a world where money dictates everything, whether that's love, loyalty, and morality. They are all secondary to wealth and status, which I think is a particularly interesting theme given where we're at as a society. And I don't think that's ever not going to be the case, but I think we're seeing it so obviously and bluntly in our faces today that I think it actually provides quite an interesting meditation on those topics. I mentioned the theme around like parental sacrifice. Goriot's obsession for his daughters who discard him when he's no longer useful or serves their desires for social advancement is a brutal indictment of both individual selfishness and also broader society that rewards that behaviour, which also kind of reinforces the cyclical nature of trauma. With one of our characters, one of the ones that I talked about earlier, Rastignac, he starts very much as an idealistic student, but then he becomes a hardened social climber, and it reflects an incredibly painful truth that one cannot rise without compromise. And what is the cost of our humanity to ensure that rise? He loses his sense of innocence, and in a way, and according to society's terms or Paris's terms at this time, is a success, but ultimately for himself, it's possibly a failure. It's so well done, it's very subtle, it's a gradual transition, and I think you really have to appreciate the first half of the book for the setup and then the conclusion it gives us by the end of the book. It is truly, truly phenomenal. I'm going to just spend a couple of minutes talking about what some readers might not like. I've already spoken a little bit about this, but I will just dedicate a small section to this. As I mentioned, quite a bit of dense writing, quite a lot of world building. It can feel excessive, and I think a lot of people might not like that, so do just bear that in mind. It is very much a slow start. I don't mind that, but I think a lot of people find that quite hard to read. It takes time to build momentum, with much of the early part of the book focusing on setting up the social hierarchies, so do keep that in mind. There are a lot of philosophical digressions in this book. I personally love that, and I think it really adds depth and layers to the story. But for a lot of people, it might feel like you're reading an essay written by a philosopher that you don't particularly want to read at this point in time. So do keep that in mind as well. And then the last thing that I will mention is that this is a book that is actually quite pessimistic, and there's little in the way of redemption and hope. This is very much a book about the brutal realities of ambition and love and the impacts that that can have not only on the individual but also broader society as a whole. I love this book so much, and it's so funny, when I finished reading it I gave it like a 4 stars because of the denseness of the writing at the start, but I think I can't not give it a 5 stars, to be honest. I think it feels like an insult to the masterpiece that this book is. And so I will just say that I've landed at a 5 stars. Like, it's so good, very refreshing, very, very well written. And I think despite some of the challenges, it is very much a masterpiece. And it is a novel that rewards a patient reader. So if you are that sort of reader, I think you're going to love this book. If you are somebody who generally likes more action and more fast paced, you will get that towards the end of the book. So I think you just kind of have to grin and bear it and really appreciate the beauty of the descriptions and the prose. But obviously that's up to you. I've never heard anybody talk about this book. So if you have, feel free to comment down below in the comments. If you have any questions, I will of course happily answer them for you. I really, 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 really want you folks to read this book. So if there's anything that I can answer that will help you figure out whether this is going to be the right book for you, please do comment down below and I will help in any way that I can. So there we have it. Those are my thoughts on Old Goriot by Honoré de Balzac. Let me know down below if you've also read any other Balzac and which ones you've liked or disliked, because I want to read more, but he's got quite an extensive backlist. So always happy to take recommendations as well. Thanks for watching, folks. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. It really does help. And if you're not subscribed, please do consider subscribing as well. And I'll see you in my next one. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, take care, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Bye.